So, in an exclusive interview with Mail Online, best friend of Lucy, who supported the SK nurse and sat with her parents during the 10-month trial, still insists that Lucy Letby is innocent. The best friend of Lucy Letby last night continued to profess that the SK nurse was innocent of the homicides of 7 babies and harming 6 others. Janet Cox, who worked alongside the 33-year-old on the neonatal unit of the Countess of Chester Hospital, said she would continue to stand by Britain's most prolific SK as her legal team has considered an appeal. Over 10 months of evidence, the jury heard how Letby had injected youngsters with air and poisoned them with insulin. She was sentenced to 14 whole life sentences earlier last week. Now, Mrs. Cox spoke briefly at the front door of her semi-detached home when approached by Mail Online. All she said when she was asked about her friend's innocence is yes, but refused to elaborate any further. For most of Letby's trial, Mrs. Cox sat beside the SK's parents, John 77 and Susan 63, in the public gallery of Court 7 at the Manchester Crown Court. The seats were across the courtroom from where the police officers and relatives of Lucy Letby's tiny victims took their own places to listen to the overwhelming evidence against her. This meant that when they were behind the SK, when she gave evidence in her own defense and under cross-examination by Nick Johnson KC. On those occasions, Lucy Letby sat at a seat in the well of the court, wedged between 2 female prison officers and surrounded by lever arch files of evidence. Mrs. Cox was with her friends when the jury returned their first verdicts, and again when they found her guilty of the first 7 homicides. On that occasion, she was comforted Lucy Letby as she left the court, sobbing and crying. "This cannot be right," she said. A man at Mrs. Cox's house previously told the Telegraph that the pair were best friends. Now, in the run-up to the trial, a number of Lucy Letby's friends stayed loyal to her, and that support is continuing even after her conviction. The nurse maintained her claims of innocence throughout her trial and refused to appear in the dock for her sentencing last Monday. The SK's barrister, Ben Myers KC, suggested she was an innocent medic who was being scapegoated by the so-called Gang of 4 pediatricians on the unit. Hospital managers upheld her formal complaint against the gang and at one stage called on them to give her written apologies. They repeatedly refused to call in police and only did so close to the end of Lucy Letby's year-long spree of the homicides. Their support for the SK meant she remained on the unit long after pediatricians had lobbied for her removal. As a result, the death toll kept on rising, a fact that will be a major focus of the eventual inquiry into the deliberate campaign of the homicide she carried out in plain sight of her colleagues. Both doctors and nurses found themselves desperately trying to save the lives of infants that she had cynically and catastrophically sabotaged. Mrs. Cox is not the only friend or colleague of Lucy Letby's to stand by her despite the overwhelming evidence of her guilt. There are still a small number of people on the neonatal unit of the Countess of Chester who still think that she is innocent, a source had told the Times. They are finding it difficult to believe that she could have done it, because for so long they were fed the narrative that Lucy Letby was being blamed by consultants who were making excuses for their own mistakes. A long-term friend of Lucy Letby named Don Howe is among those who refuse to accept the jury's decision that the nurse is a baby SK. Speaking to the BBC's Panorama program, Miss Howe, 33, said, "Unless Lucy turned around and says, 'I'm guilty,' I will never believe that she is guilty. We know she couldn't have done anything that she is accused of, so without a doubt we stand by her. I grew up with Lucy, and not a single thing that I have ever seen or witnessed of Lucy would let me for a moment believe she is capable of the things she's accused of. It is the most out-of-character accusation that could ever be put against Lucy. Think of your most kind, gentle, soft friend and think that they're being accused of harming babies. She also accused police of trying to build a case to find someone culpable, to find someone to blame, as she maintained Lucy Letby's innocence. Conspirators who believe Lucy Letby was wrongly convicted have now launched a campaign to set her free. Sarita Adams, a U.S. scientific consultant who has been following Lucy Letby's trial, will shortly launch a fundraiser that seeks to overturn what she has branded the greatest miscarriage of justice that the UK has ever witnessed. In his sentencing remarks, Mr. Justice Goss said colleagues at the Countess of Chester Hospital were forced to think the unthinkable when they realized that Lucy Letby was deliberately hurting these babies. Now, police searches of Lucy Letby's home uncovered grim mementos of her victims, mountains of handover notes swiped from the hospital, a diary marking the dates that the babies had died, a post-it note that read, "I am evil, I did this." Mr. Justice Goss said, "I am satisfied you started to keep these documents after those initial offenses in June of 2015 as morbid records of the dreadful events surrounding the collapses of your victims and what you have done to them. Some of your victims were only a day or a few days old. All were extremely vulnerable. By their nature and number, such homicides and attempted homicides by a neonatal nurse entrusted to care for them are offenses of very exceptional seriousness. This was cruel, calculated, and cynical campaign of child homicides involving the smallest and most vulnerable of children, knowing that your actions were causing significant physical suffering and would cause untold mental suffering. You have shown no remorse, and there are no mitigating factors." Okay, so as you can see, that there's this fundraiser, this GoFundMe that's been started by Claire Archer. Now, as of recently, and I had just refreshed, it hasn't changed. It's at £1,085. Again, whether you believe that Lucy Letby is guilty or innocent, everyone is entitled to their opinions regardless. Who am I to tell somebody else how to think, and who is someone to tell me how to think? That's how I always look at it. Even if I believe that she is guilty, a lot of other people might believe that she didn't receive the justice she deserved. But again, each to their own thoughts. So we're going to finish off this video with the parents, Mike and Vicky Whitfield. So back in 2013, Lucy Letby was their nurse, or a nurse that had come in to look at their child. Now, the mother, Vicky, had decided, hey, I'm going to go downstairs, check on my child. And that's when she saw Lucy Letby at the cot. Now, they didn't think much about it until 2018, when Lucy Letby all of a sudden is charged for these homicides and attempted homicides of these children. And once it became news, that's when they really went back to it and said, wait a second, we believe that Lucy Letby attempted to harm our child too. So I'll let you listen to the video.
Well, basically, it was around 3 o'clock in the morning. I just got, I don't know what, like a mother's instinct to go downstairs to see her. She was doing fine the days before. She was breathing for herself when she was first born. She had a little bit of CPAP just to help her, but she was breathing fine for herself and she was doing great. So much so that the night before, who Mike believes was Lucy Letby, told him to go home and get some rest because he looked tired. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I just had an urge to go down. I went downstairs, I sat by the cot. But as I was walking towards the cot, Lucy was standing over the cot. She just looked up at me and then walked away, and then I walked towards the cot. I sat down, and within seconds, all the beepers started going off and all hell broke loose. Yeah, it was when I was walking down towards the cot, when she was doing fine, as we all thought, that when she was... I've got this constant and permanent image in my head of when she was standing over the cot. There was no smile, and when she looked up, it was just a look up and a really blank look on her face, and then she just walked off from the cot. And then for everything to go crazy, virtually within what felt like seconds after, it may have been a little bit longer than that, and it was just, I don't know, it's just an image that I can't get out of my head. And as soon as I seen the image on the TV, it was that exact same stare. It was the exact same, the expression, and it just made me sick to the stomach. No, as soon as all the alarms went off, she wasn't there. She never came back to try to revive Felicity. It was another nurse that came in and basically pressed the emergency buzzers, and then other nurses came over. After that, after the initial nurse who pressed the buzzer, I'm not sure who the other nurses were that came around, because I went into a bit of a state of shock because I was screamed at to get Mike, because she said, get your husband. And I kind of was in a state of shock, didn't hear, and then she screamed at me, get him now. So everything just completely just went crazy after that. No, we called for a meeting back in 2014, I think it was, roughly a year after Felicity had been born, with the Countess, and raised our concerns with them. And we were basically told it's one of them things that sometimes happens in premature babies.
Okay, you guys. So check out these other videos that I've done on Lucy Letby as well. And please leave your comments in the comment section. Hit that like and the share. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. Thank you very much and have a blessed day.